So, I don't know if you've seen me before. Maybe some of you I've met, some of you I might have seen a couple of weeks ago. But I'm stepping in as visiting curator for Unidee this week. My name is Sandi, and just I'll give you a bit of my background. That I've been working as a curator, and I've been working also as an academic researcher in the past few years. And Andy and I crossed paths at one point when I was in the UK doing my PhD, and he was still with Black Dog. And ever since we've been in contact. And when he came up with the residency program, then I was very curious, so we started collaborating, and also he decided to invite me as visiting curator because I've been working with Cittadellarte since 2014. So it's been over 6 years now that I've been mentoring, and I think some of you also participated in some of my workshops. So it's great to see you all. And this is our fourth seminar. Today with us we have Sandi Hilal, that you can see, she's online. And I just wanted to go through, give you the background sort of the program. I know that you've been through this a couple of times, but it might be the first time for Sandi. So the program is a 10-week program, a residency program. There are 40 or more artists who are participating, and we're all looking at the post-pandemic future, embedded arts practice in a post-pandemic future. What does that mean? We still have to figure out, I guess, and some of us are working on it. But in general, I think it's really important to have a program like this because it's interesting to see how socially engaged arts and can you hear me? Or is my audio a little bit?
We hear you, we hear you.
So the socially engaged arts, I mean the challenges that you'll find for the socially engaged arts and for embedded practice. So I'm going to share my screen, and I think I have a problem with the audio. So can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Yeah, better. Okay. So I'm going to share my screen, and I'm just going to show you the schedule. I think most of you already know how it works. So we're going to have Sandi's presentation until 3:15, and then we're going to have a break, and then we're going to break out into group discussions. And I think what's important that Sandi might have not seen and that we're going to talk about over the week is how this residency is actually built, and it's built around a series of moments that all artists will go through in some way. And I think the notion of action research is quite interesting. So everybody's asked to present a project on action research that they can do either in their neighborhood or in their community. When they come to Biella, they have the possibility to either test it out, or they have the possibility to think about that methodology with their peers and with their mentors. And then when they leave Cittadellarte, they leave a trace of what they've done here in Biella, and then they bring their methodology back home. So I think in those terms, maybe Sandi can also talk about her experience as an architect and a researcher on what action research actually means. I think that's probably something that could be coherent to the work that you've brought through with decolonizing architecture. And I don't know if you're going to speak about other projects, but I might leave it to you on the introduction of your methodology, especially as a group and as a group of researchers and architects. So I guess I'll see you in half an hour. And
and then we'll have moments to have questions. So up to you, Sandi.
Thank you very much, and I'm very happy and thrilled to be among you. And actually, what I upon this invitation of sharing methodology, I was thinking that maybe it would worth it to sort of take you in maybe one word, one concept that has been following us and in that sense, I would like also very much to tell you from a very personal point of view, because and what does it mean to work both collectively and individually, and why sometimes collective works might be urgent unnecessarily for our own minds. And I would like to maybe take the concept decolonization. I mean, we have been working in decolonizing architecture for a long time already. And definitely my relation with the concept decolonization began before, way before actually establishing the collective decolonizing architecture. And therefore with this maybe spirit of thinking about methodology and thinking about concepts, I would love to point out that one major way of us working is how we look at life as a major source of knowledge, and what does that mean, and how actually we connect it to our own experiences, and then how this shared together with the world. And therefore, even I would like to take my half an hour only to explain you what is my relation with the world decolonization through different projects, and how this worked with me. And I guess, you know, if I have to trace the word decolonization, it does not even have an Arabic translation. It's a hard word that can be translated into Arabic, but yet I think that I want to begin from my relation with colonization in order to speak about my relation with the word decolonization. Also because I don't think that there is one definition for the word decolonization, and I will try to explain why. And in that sense, you know, I definitely, I was born Palestinian. I born in Beit Sahur in Palestine, and I maybe lived very much my period of formation during the first Intifada. And during the first Intifada, there was a moment definitely where, as Palestinians, we were still believing in the democracy of the world. And maybe I would say also in modernity. I want to bring this term in. And we were still believing that if the world would see the colonization we are under, would understand how we are victims under this colonization, then this is our way out, right? There was still a bit of a faith in this world that only if the world would know, and therefore you would go out, you would throw stones, you would throw your ID cards, you would say, I am not paying taxes, very non-violent civil disobedience that talks to the rest of the world, etc., etc. And this moment was still a moment where, paradoxically enough, if I would think about it now, it was still believing in the West as the major power of the world, right? It was still believing that the solution must come from there, right? It's not that they are only our colonizers, but definitely the solution, if not from them, would never be coming, right? And in that sense, paradoxically enough, you would think more, you know, people in Great Britain, more people in the United States, in the strongest power would know about our victimhood, then this is the solution. And this was incredible, you know, for me retrospectively to think that, you know, we naively thought that the solution would come from our own colonizers. And then I moved from there and went to study in Italy, architecture. And definitely there, you know, my whole still thinking believing in progress, in modernity, in Western culture, most probably, and in, you know, I would become a much better person the moment I have the ability to study in Europe, to get a degree of architecture from Venice, etc., etc. Still believing that this is the way forward. And not only, I mean, finishing architecture, I, together with my partner, Alessandro Petti, we did the first project called Stateless Nation in Venice Biennale, where we were problematizing very much this idea of representation for people without state. But still, even with this, and also another parallel project I was doing, we did with Multiplicity, at that point called Roadmap, and both of them was still very much talking to the power, right? Talking to the power, convincing the center, convincing the place from where the power stays, you know, from inside Europe, and speaking with the West, right? And trying to do projects to explain what is happening with the same exact sort of you know, attitude of, if people would know, we are sure that things would change, right? After these two projects, and you know, what I am trying to do here, and I hope you are following me, is simply to just go through all my practice in order only to tell you my relation with the word decolonization. So I would not be explaining projects. If later on you are interested, you know, I can definitely share a copy of the book, and I can share many other things. But for now, I would not speak about the projects, but I would concentrate on one only concept in that sense. And, you know, and after these two projects, Stateless Nation and Roadmap, it was 2006, and I got pregnant, and we decided to go and live in Palestine. And, you know, taking this decision was a bit of not an easy one, especially with the fact that we were expecting a child. And many of our friends and also family were just like, are you sure you want to have your kids living under occupation, right? Under colonialism? And what did that mean for us? And why did we take this decision? And in a sense, I guess it was more Alessandro than me, I have to admit. I was still figuring out. It was for me a return back home. So, and I was definitely happy to come back to a very strong, you know, extended family and sustainability. And it was for me to still be continuing going on in my own work and interest. But for Alessandro, he was telling me, you know, I don't see any future of having my kids growing in a society where the max that we could achieve is to buy a house, and then a summer house, and then a car, and then this whole dream of us two and the child, or us two and two childs, and have this life perspective. So he was really escaping from that. I mean, it's very strange. I'm having a great moment of super sun in Stockholm, but do you see me with a lot of sun? Should I close the, yeah, one second. Is this better? Okay. So and therefore we went to Palestine, and at that point our relation with the word colonization and decolonization shifted completely, because it was a moment where we had to sort of figure out what does it mean to live under colonialism and have our strategies of daily life in order to encounter and resist this colonialism. And it's from there that we departure with the group Decolonizing Architecture, Art and Residency. And actually it was a very interesting moment where we were both me, Alessandro, and Eyal Weitzman sitting on one of the stairs in Berlin, and we were a bit laughing around ourselves and saying, you know, we have passed the last years analyzing Israeli occupation, right? And we became expert in analyzing the power of colonialism, and then what next? No, and it was a time where we all finished our PhDs, and Alessandro and Eyal published the book, and I began to actually work in the UN, and it was all about analyzing colonization. We spent a lot of time analyzing the power and thinking, how can we understand better the machine, the power machine of colonization? And we were laughing, thinking, what should we do next, right? And at this point, few months later, we decided to sort of establish decolonizing architecture art residency. And at that point, we began to open up our own house in order to give space to discussions around decolonization. Also because it might sound very strange, but you know, discourse of decolonization and architecture was completely absent in the Palestinian public realm. And we sort of decided that this is what we want to do, and there was no spaces. I mean, 15 years ago, institutions was not as interested in the concept of decolonization as they might be interested today, even in Palestine. And therefore, we found ourselves sort of establishing a studio collective in a place where maybe we had no room in the public realm and institutions. And suddenly we thought that our house is the best place from where to begin thinking decolonization. And therefore we began to do residencies, we began to do lectures, we began to open up our own private space into a quasi into an institution, right? Because we felt that institutions and public space had no space for us, and the only space was the domestic house. So we turned our house into a place where we were hosting so many people. I mean, in that sense, until now, I meet so many people, and sometimes I'm having hard time to remember everybody, because the amount of people that passes from our house is incredible. And a lot of time people would tell me, yeah, I know, we were at lunch or at dinner at your house, so or we slept at your house. And my memory is having hard time to process everyone that was there. But matter of fact, it was a moment where we opened our own private realm to understand, together with many interested people, how to redefine the word decolonization. And at that point, we began to think, we began from a very basic point, I guess, when we decided to think about the future of Israeli colonial settlements, and which would mean that we will take a settlement and we will transform this settlement into how it could be used after the Israelis would leave it, right? So we began from, and then military camps, and then slowly we arrive also to work on the concepts of how can we work in camps, because two islands we faced in Palestine that are a result of the colonialism. One is the Israeli settlements, and the other is the Palestinian refugee camps, for two different reasons, yet comes out of one thing, which is colonialism. They are both two voids, two legal voids, because the camp is a legal void. It's outside of the state structure, and the Israeli settlements are illegally standing in the West Bank. And then we get inside refugee camps, so we began to understand decolonization from that perspective. And we began to understand how looking at cities and as our own life from a camp point of view would change and shift completely our own thoughts. And from there, actually, we finally had looked at many projects that we did in the camp, and we give it a title of permanent temporariness. And in that sense, we began also to understand, what does it mean? How colonialism push you to live as temporary person forever? Because the whole idea of this life that is unsettled, this life that is sort of can change in any moment. You are in a place and you are not sure that you can invest in this place. And actually, matter of fact, we ourselves were in this moment where for 10 years we lived illegally as a family, because the Israeli occupation never granted any family reunion for Alessandro, and therefore we lived for 10 years without legal papers. So in that sense, it became for us very clear this what does it mean on everyday life to deal and face colonization, and where this would take us. And one thing that maybe I would like to a bit take you there, because a lot of time, and this is a very important moment for me, we think that decolonization is the task of the people that were colonized, right? And in that sense, as if first, they come and colonize them, and second, they ask them to do the process of decolonization themselves. And here the question, my question is that what is our tasks, all of us, all of you, that you are hearing me in this moment, no matter from your position, if you are white, black, which kind of identity you are coming from, I'm asking you eventually to try to position yourself in the discourse of decolonization. I mean, what kind of position is it that you would like to enable colonized people to decolonize themselves? Is it that, I cannot speak, I am a white man, I cannot absolutely speak about decolonization because it's not up to me to speak about decolonization, and then therefore first I colonize these people and then ask them to give me the solution of being decolonized? Or are you a white man that recognize your urgent need, even way more urgent than colonized people, to decolonize yourself, to decolonize your own culture, and you deal with it, right? So it's very important. This distinction is crucial for me, because this was what I understood working in Palestine. This was what I understood working nearby two men that for many people might result as a white men, and among them my own partner Alessandro Petti, that is coming from south of Italy, and he realized more and more how actually the internal colonialism in Italy is to be looked at and analyzed very strongly. How he, as someone coming from south of Italy, was victim to this colonization, and what did that mean for him? How can he understand his own process of decolonization from Palestine? Or, for example, working with Eyal Weizman, and he's Israeli himself, and he had to deal with decolonization. And I have to admit that this beginning of that collaboration was crucial for me. At the beginning, it felt I was the only one that needs to be decolonizing, and in many ways they were figuring out their own roles in that group, and that it resulted that it's not we understood together that this has nothing to do with reality, that all of us from different perspectives needs to decolonize our own minds. All of us are built within this machine of colonization, within this frame of colonization, with this the whole sort of frame that we are all part of. It is what we need to reframe, what we need to re-narrate. And this is how I define decolonization. For me, decolonization is not to actually be included in the frame, because a lot of time what the max that people would offer you is to be included. And therefore, sometimes I act very badly when someone would say, I give you the microphone, here are the voice. I mean, I give you the voice. Who are you to give me the voice, right? I mean, is that I don't want to be given a voice. I want to change the frame, right? So I became very angry with many people that thinks that by giving the voice, they are doing something, because by giving the voice, you are actually still establishing your own superiority, because you think that you can give someone a voice, right? So I mean, I really go sometimes harsh to all the people that are constantly thinking that they are good enough, because what they do in life is to give voices. If you have the luxury to give voice, means that you have been colonized, you have been part of this matrix of colonization forever, and you are still contributing to this matrix of colonization. So for me, it becomes absolutely clear is that it is everybody's sort of task to understand. We all live. We cannot ignore that at this moment of life, and the pandemic is one of these moments that would show it even more and more, is that we are all living within a frame and matrix of colonization. And we all need to sort of understand how to position ourselves within a discourse of and approaches of decolonization. And that doesn't mean that we all need to decolonize in the same way. And here maybe I would come to decolonization as an approach. And it's very, very important for me to sort of clarify this. Maybe this would be the last thing I would try to clarify, because it will be also nice to hear from you and open up for more questions and dialogues, is that, you know, why I believe that decolonization is also a matter of time and space and position, right? So in that sense, when I was in Palestine, I was definitely engaging with various institutions, and my whole idea of decolonization was how to understand from the ground, from building and initiating different kinds of institutions and discourses in a place like Palestine, where this was an impossibility. This was my role and task of decolonization. And then after I managed to say that after we lived 10 years in Palestine illegally, we were forced to leave for many reasons that I would not speak about now. But the moment that, and then we left and we went to Sweden. And Sweden is one of these countries that, you know, they did not have physical colonization, and they really believe that most of them, not all of them, of course, believe that they are out of the matrix of colonization. But they take modernity very strongly, and it became to them. And for me, there is no, separating the colonial from the modern would be a big mistake, because for me, what really happened, what I introduced myself through, is that, you know, I myself was thinking that I would get out of where I am the moment that I would become a modern person, right? I would become, and they came to Palestine, India, many other places in the world. They colonized in the name of progress and modernity. You know, they colonized people, promising them that what they will be bringing them is progress and modernity. And in that sense, this was the deal, right? This was the deal. This is also why we find many people and many refugees still thinking that, you know, Europe is the place where to be, because Europeans came and told everybody of us and the rest of the world that this is where, this is the model, this is what we all should be living in. And so in that sense, they are really, modernity and colonialism are part of the same coin. I mean, they are the face of two faces of one coin. So in a sense, when I found myself in a place like Sweden and initiated the Living Room Project, definitely my task of decolonization shifted radically. And in there, it was, again, I mean, bringing back this whole initial discourse that I was speaking about, is that how you change the frame and from which position you change the frame. And suddenly I found myself refusing to accept the contract of becoming a guest, a long-term guest in Sweden. And it was actually refusing the frame. It was saying, no, I do not want only to be guest. I want to become a host. I don't want to lose my act of hosting in the city. And in that sense, claiming that a human can be human only if he is a guest and the host in the same moment, in the same body, becomes the struggle for decolonization for me. But then, I mean, the project of the living room went on for a few years, and now we are beginning a new project in Italy. And it's bringing me again in a complete different task of decolonization. Because if in Sweden, I refused since the beginning to sign the contract for integration, and I say guest forever, I would not be. In Italy, when I arrived, that I was only 19 years old, I accepted and signed together with I signed the contract of integration. And signing the contract of integration means that I signed a contract where I promised that I would try to become as similar to Italian as I can, right? And I really, if you would take me, I would be one of these people that would tick all boxes. You know, I speak Italian fluently. I did my PhD in Italy. I love cooking Italian. I miss Italy a lot of time, much more than how Alessandro missed it. You know, all the vacations, most of the time I want to be in Italy. I mean, name it all. I have to admit that I really sort of took this contract seriously, and I respect my promise, but I feel that the promise back was not respected, and I'm still looked at, seen, and described as an extracomunitaria in Italy, someone that is outside of that community, right? Italian, I have never become. And in a sense, now we are launching this new project in Italy called Ente di Decolonization, and it is entity of decolonization, and it's very much a person. You know, when fascism was established, they established what they call entity of colonization in the 40s, and the entity of colonization actually both operated in Sicily and outside of Italy, in Eritrea, and in a sense, it's incredible to see how fascism looked at Sicily as a place to be modernized, no, as a place to be exactly in the same way as they looked at Libya, right? I mean, there was no difference for the fascist regime of thinking Sicily and arriving to this, what they called the empty places. I mean, empty places in the eyes of whom? I mean, why would you ever consider, you know, this whole idea and arrogance of thinking that there is an emptiness there, that we need to go and modernize and bring progress and bring cities, etc., etc. I mean, it's not empty. There is land there. There are people. There are traces of animals. There are, you know, only to claim the emptiness of the land, for me, is what constitutes colonialism, right? And in that sense, exactly from in 10 days, actually, we will launch from the Palazzo dell'Esposizione. This is the place in Rome where Mussolini himself actually claimed that art is the best propaganda machine. We would like to launch the entity of decolonization. And for me, the entity of decolonization is actually my clear way to break the contract I signed in Italy. I don't want to carry on this contract, and I want to change it my own self. I want to be a self-initiator of a new contract and breaking that contract that was not respected anyhow. And so this is my new way of thinking decolonization in Europe, and in Italy. And what I would like to tell you here is that, you know, I am the same person having a history that actually was built one on top of the other. But matter of fact, each time depending where I am and depending what kind of position of power I'm dealing with, and how I should behave and think and decolonize and react and resist maybe decolonization, my tasks and strategies changed radically, right? So in that sense, it's very important each time to still be questioning these concepts and how these concepts of decolonization grow in me. I mean, and more you would sort of understand, you more you think that you are pushing your own limits of understanding the concept and the way to operate. And in that sense, I don't know, I think that it's very hard all the time to think that we can solve the world problems, but at least if we arrive to a point where we are challenging our own matrix of colonization in our own mind, and we do it in a collective manner, we might arrive somewhere. We might be able to do something where we are able to act collectively. So, I mean, I think that I would stop here. I would love to hear from you. I know that, I mean, I prefer that we sort of more get in dialogue and use the time in dialogue. And then maybe if you are interested, please direct me. I mean, I would love to hear from you before I can't speak forever, but I prefer to be in tune with the group and understand what is it, where would you like to hear me most?
Thank you, Sandi. That was amazing. That was really great. Thank you so much. And I'm going to be switching my video from where I am to the group constantly. So I hope that doesn't disturb you. And I think that what you talked about was inspiring for a lot of the residents that are participating in the program for different reasons. I know that we talked about a lot about Sicily with Irene in this past week, and you have the chance maybe to speak with her tomorrow. And she's thinking about doing a project in Sicily. So definitely the idea of colonization in Sicily is going to be something that's going to be a good soundboard. But I think in general, the question, the famous question that you asked is what is our task, which I saw on the chat really shocked everybody. I see this is a super important question. Definitely, thanks for bringing it up. So this idea that we have a task, first of all, and we have to define what it is within a certain discourse, within the discourse of colonization, decolonization, but also within the discourse of art or architecture, depending on where people are at in their own careers and in their own research. It's definitely one of the most important in order to position oneself towards discourses and social discourses, especially, I believe. And then the second part is that within all the projects and that you had, the notion of education and pedagogy and dialogue kept coming up. So that must have been also this idea that you work collectively with brainstorming, with talking, with figuring out together what certain terms mean, seems to be something common within your practice. And that's something that's also happening throughout the residency here, you know, collectively, either here or online, we're trying to go through research projects and trying to go through a lot of questions. So that's only a few comments that I had, but I would leave it to the group to ask questions either via chat, or I'm going to change the video, or in presence, because we have 3 people who are in presence here. And so let me know. So who has questions?
Me. I have questions.
Okay.
Can I ask the question?
Yes, please.
Well,
We can't hear you that well.
now it's better.
Now it's better, yes.
Okay, I would like to thank you as a very nice contribution, also a very nice, clear and honest speak. And I think it's great also to talk from a personal perspective because for me, decolonization has to do much with this personal perspective, but also it's pretty much entangled in part of that it's based on our daily lives. Just to say, there's a female author. I can share her name in the name of the book, but she defends that decolonization and her perspective is giving back the land to the natives. And I think it's some part that also that's your topic about territory. And of course, this is part of a big change in everything that concerns to food production. I mean, basically economy is something that really changes or affects the base of economy. So is this land back to the natives? And I think also everything that we touch in our daily lives has to do with this process of colonization and also decolonization. I know that my camera is a bit creepy because it's here down on the computer. I'm just trying to manage. So to say, I live in Germany and I find very interesting. In Germany, they call Feinkosten, everything that is related to these colonial products like coffee, tobacco, chocolate, and on and on. Just to say, like to make the link with this decolonization, because we are so used to have all these products in our table, and they are part of our daily lives, and they become also part of our memory. And even though in Italy, for example, the Italian coffee is a brand of Italy as a culture, but we all know that the coffee doesn't come from Italy at all. So I think there is this point about decolonization that it's very radical in the sense that goes everything that is already established. And one thing that I would like to address to you, it's about architecture. So how is it implemented in the terms of architecture, construction of extractivism, because we also know that every plan of building new buildings, new cities or new perspectives, they are based on materials. Where does these materials come from? How this decolonization in architecture can be related to these natural sources? Yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that here I would love to relate this to a bit of the different tasks that we spoke about, right? I mean, we don't need all to maybe deal with decolonization in the same manner, but one thing definitely, you know, I have been influenced very much by Edward Said when he at a certain point spoke about the empire, right? I mean, the whole idea of building an empire and the architecture of an empire. And he says, you know, even before they went out to make this empire a visible and material empire, they had to build it culturally, right? They had through both art, culture, academia, institutions. I mean, there has been a building of frame in order for it then to become a material manifestation, right? So, and in that sense, of course, the moment that you build a frame, a theoretical frame that permits you to make this a possibility, then the role of architects comes, and architects normally are very much, and more, I have to admit, more regimes are strong, more architects are able to do what they have in mind, because normally what they are super good at is to give forms, architectural forms, material form to certain ideologies, right? And then the land, you know, taking away the land, victim some people, stealing all what you can be stealing, taking away everything and claiming it's yours. And this is a very long process, right? From building the frame to stealing the smallest kick of coffee, I don't know how to, it is one long process we all need to deal with. And there is no, I mean, there is no task that is more important than another one, right? I mean, it's all of these tasks are very important. But I personally, and when I position myself as someone that is very much interested at this point, maybe with all the intersections that I have between being Palestinian and have lived in Europe for a long time. I am a Palestinian, but a Palestinian, a Greek Orthodox Palestinian, which means that I am an Arab with a sort of Christian background. And I has been all the time at the intersections of things. And I felt all the time at the edges of these frames. And I maybe decided to give myself the task of challenging and reframing the frame, exactly because most probably throughout all my entire life, I found myself in the thresholds, and I decided that this is my task. While maybe my grandmother's task has been a complete different one. She was, her main big task, which was huge and amazing and still very important, is to protect the land, is to save that land, is to, so each one of us, we should not, I think that we should not absolutely get in the big mistake of thinking that, you know, a lot of times, especially within struggles, if you would think about it, I mean, struggles feels that other struggles might dismiss them. So when you speak about Palestinian PDS, they would tell you, but how about this? How about that? How about that other? So each one has his own territorial struggle. And we sort of sometimes, in order, we think that our struggle would resist the most if we dismiss other struggles, because we feel that they are taking away space from us. And I guess that if we would understand decolonization, that it of us dismissing each other tasks, understanding that we are building on each other tasks, then I guess it's there where we can begin to build something seriously. So I have to admit that in my case, I am more interested in the task of the frame rather than other tasks, but I understand also the urgency of many other tasks, the urgency of the restitution of the land and of certain art and of definitely. But I guess that what I am trying to say is that maybe the path I decided to embark in is into this direction, but maybe direct forward challenge to the frame itself. And maybe because of my position in Europe in this moment, I mean, I feel myself in the center of the in where this whole colonial matrix was built, and I feel that my main task here might be, and the most urgent, is to challenge this matrix and this frame.
Thank you, Sandi. And there are a couple of questions that came up from the chat. Aida asks, what about internalized capitalism and colonialism? Aren't we in a position of privilege thanks to education and status? How do we share our privilege?
I would not use how do we share our privilege rather than how do we use our privileges. Because, for example, I completely recognize that I have a huge privilege of being able to actually live in two cultures, understanding two cultures, being able to be at the intersection of Islam and Christianism in the same moment, to be at the intersection of the Arab world and Europe in the same moment. I mean, these are huge, amazing privileges in my life. The question is not because we cannot discriminate someone that have privilege. I mean, I don't feel, I have been discriminated because I born Palestinian, and I don't never want ever in my life to discriminate anyone because he born white with a certain privilege. I would actually, what is it that you are doing with that privilege? And I would love people to ask me, what is it that you are doing with that privilege? How are you using this privilege? This is why I spoke about tasks, right? The moment that we give ourselves the task of understanding how and what we recognize certain privileges, definitely, and then we understand what does it mean for us to use these privileges, and how can we use these privileges in order to make a process of decolonization possible, a process of more equal opportunities possible, a process of justice, a more just life possible. This is where I do not want to discuss someone only because he born in Paris or in London. I think we are doing the same exact thing by doing so, and by using identity politics. We are doing the same exact thing that was done to us. And I do not want, my colonizers were victims. They were victims by the Western world, and I do not want, and they are victimizing me right now, and I do not want to use the same. I hope to be not to actually accept to victimize people only because I have been victimized myself. I guess it's very important that we recognize this and we open the floor for as much as possible to fight for a more just life and decolonization, rather than pointing the hands on who born white and just exclude them out of that struggle. We should all understand how we use our privileges to contribute better for a more inclusive world.
Thanks, Sandi. And we have another couple questions as well. Julia has two questions, actually. First is, can post-colonialist, I believe, theorists have any role in decolonization? And the second one is, when decolonizing ourselves, especially through education, is using other cultures, text, theory, a form of colonialism appropriation itself, how should we question our way of doing and reading theory?
Well, first, I think that I distance myself most of the time from the post-colonial sort of era, because I think that we are still very much living a very colonial matrix, and we are not yet a post in any post anything. I guess we need to sort of rethink this. And then, to the second question, if how much we use it in order to, if I am understanding well, to instrumentalize or expropriate, I give you sometimes, of course, we only refuge in personal experiences, because otherwise I don't know even where to refuge otherwise. But when I colonization with both Eyal and Alessandro, there are certain places that I would have never gone alone, especially, for example, rethinking the Palestinian right of return. This was for me a big red line. I mean, I was born also in culture. All cultures has taboos. It's not that there is a cultures that are completely victim cultures and to be preserved completely, or other cultures that are need to be thrown away because they are sort of colonial and bad culture. It doesn't work this way. I mean, the way it works is that, you know, we sort of help each others into breaking these taboos. And this is where I would say, this is for me, the mind decolonization is not, you know, when you have people around you where you would feel safe enough to sort of trust your mind, right? Because it's very important. Sometimes there are, and here maybe, you know, when you told me you work and think in common, right? And I think that it's more than working and thinking in common, is for me a lot of time finding myself in a room where I have people that I trust my mind with. And the moment that you trust your mind with some people, you let them support you in breaking certain taboos that you have been living with. And you know, here I would really ask you to think about this very strongly. I mean, I was and lived for a long time under colonialism, and I have been colonized. So I would be part of the people that would be classified as colonized people. But I can tell you that the amount of colonial thoughts that I have in my mind are infinite. And more I clean them, more I realized how huge they are and how big they are in my own mind. And to be left alone to sort of clean this is, I think, is an impossible task so far for me, has been, and I needed to trust certain people in and certain people that are not coming from sort of books, because the problem is that we have been classified in books. This is what was done with us in the last 100 years. I mean, we have been classified in boxes, and each one of us needs to protect that box. And I'm so tired of being caged. You know, all what happened to me is, you should stay in this box, and people would like to see you in this book. Books would like to give you the face as a Palestinian woman. More I am dressed as a Palestinian woman, better is I make everybody happy. And more I stick to these books, more everybody would be super happy about me. I don't want to be. I think that this is a cage. It's not only for me. Sometimes identities can be, and that doesn't mean that I don't want. I mean, I am a super fighter for what Palestine is today, but I think that Palestine has a great task to contribute to the rest of the world, and I want to be a contributor, right? I do not want to be seen as victim, and that people would like to help me. I think that the knowledge we Palestinians acquired as colonized people in the last years is a very crucial and essential knowledge to the world. And I want to be a contributor, and I want to build my network of thinkers and people and colleagues and friends and people I love and share with and trust my mind with, to actually help me. And I would definitely also help them into getting into this process together, because it's not a process that we can do individually. I mean, they convince us that independency and individualism is very important. I would say that also in the process of decolonization, collectivities and trusting each other to the point that we trust each other in our minds. I mean, we trust our minds with each other is crucial for any process of decolonization. Otherwise, mind decolonization would be an impossibility.
I have another comment or question from Jade. This parallels a lot with the idea of breaking the cycle on an abuse, how we may subconsciously or more sinisterly choose continue it. This has been interesting. Thank you so much. And then another question. What do you think about the recent massive overthrowing of colonial monuments around the world? Which is actually a question that I wanted to ask you as well, by Catalina.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I didn't understand the question, but if you can read me the previous question, so I can maybe answer both.
Jade can intervene, maybe. Are you there, Jade? Yeah.
It wasn't really a question, actually. I was just I was thinking a lot about this idea of like breaking a pattern or a cycle of abuse, and how it just seems to kind of parallel completely that personal and political breaking of an abuse. And yeah, so it wasn't really a question. I was just saying thank you and recognizing that.
Okay. Well, I am a bit with this question of the monuments now. I am let me put it this way. I didn't arrive to any conclusion. I'm not sure what is it, and sometimes I worry that it's a bit of a whitewashing for certain. That this whole colonial matrix becomes so clear to many people, and there was a need of destroying some material manifestation of this colonialism as a way to calm down me. And on the other hand, I think that it's a very important discussion that needs to take place, right? So in a sense, maybe I would answer, I maybe I know to answer it for you, because I would take it from somewhere else. When there was a moment in Gaza where Israelis were given, right, to the Palestinians. And there was a whole discussion on what to do with these settlements. Should we destroy them? Should we reuse them? Should we? And in there was a bit of, we had a very long discussions. And I think that I personally was trying to say is that if we will destroy them, then, it is a bit of a fake. It's like having a pain relief killers, right? So if you think that colonialism is there through it wasn't the architecture itself, it was the ideology that built this taken away. And sometimes architecture as a form is a very easy thing to build an ideology and to fake a destruction of an ideology. So I don't know if you follow me, but what I'm trying to say is that, as an architect, I recognize that when there is an ideology that needs to be seen by people, they ask architects to intervene, and architects are amazing in giving forms to these ideologies and making this appear in a material form. When there is a need to actually destroy this ideology, it is very easy, because the first that people think about is architecture. And what works sometimes is that the destruction of this architecture seems to be finally that we destroy the monster, but we have never destroyed that monster, because that monster stays in the ideology, does not stays only in these stones, right? So in that, we were at a certain point proposing, and then suddenly, there are one that you destroy it and thinks it's over. The second is that another regime, and sometimes local regime, would come, like in the case of the Palestinian Authority, and use these settlements in the same way that Israelis use them. So they turn them into prisons, they turn them into Palestinian Authority, military camps, etc., etc. So it's simply a shift of a regime, and have nothing to do with liberation. And the third thing that we were all the time trying to advocate for is, how about a process of subversion or a process of profanation? When you profane a place, you give it a different sort of, you take away the ideology first, and then the building itself becomes harmful. No, I mean, you can still be using it for other purposes, profaning it for other sort of. We should not take it with the material manifestation of that ideology. We should profane that ideology with changing into something else. And unfortunately, a lot of time, I mean, material manifestations like architecture, like monuments, into being a very good pain, momentaneous painkiller.
There are a couple of comments as well. So Aida comments saying breaking a cycle of an abuse, yes, resilience, collective resilience. And Christine also says erasing monuments, there's the potential for dialogue and debate. And Jade also intervenes talking about a film by Phil Collins. I don't know if you know it. About the journey of a destroyed Engels statue from Ukraine to Manchester. I don't know if you've seen it. It's called The Condition of the Working Class in England. So that's something that could be of an inspiration for the conversation. So it's 3:10. I don't know if other people have questions, if the room has questions. No. Well, I think that we can probably take a break and maybe Sandy, we can a couple of keywords for the group sessions in the break. So maybe the topics that came up within our talk. And just a note that I wanted to add to the conversation is that the embeddedness what we've been talking about in this past week is quite interesting, this difference between embedded and embodied, and so how a practice is embodied and can be taken out or continued as an embodied practice, but then it's also embedded at the same time within a local context. And so I think that a lot of what you have been talking about is really, it really kind of sounds into this idea that the practice is embedded within local context, within groups, within ideology, within also courses and social discourses, but you also embody in some way these discourses in trying to ask a question like, what is our task? I mean, that's it. There's an embodiedness to the fact that you actually have to position yourself, your life within a certain discourse. So I don't know if you want to comment on Sandy, just to close the conversation.
Maybe to add into this, definitely, this comes very also from the first, from the fact that we deal with a lot of socially engaged public art, and what does that mean? And I would love really to take this opportunity, connect this, because a lot of artists actually position themselves in a way that they would like to enable communities. They would like to build for them possible project ways out, etc. And some might be helping communities. And I have been a lot of time a bit skeptical about this, and most probably because I would have been one of these, in this summer, we visited the Mostra di Oltremare in Napoli, which was this exhibition that was done during the fascist regime, where they actually brought black bodies, exhibit them in the exhibition. It was a way also to show Italians, black bodies, not all of them were ever encountered black bodies live. So in that moment, they brought many people to be exhibited. And I don't, maybe the fact that I came out of a place where one of these exhibited people in exhibitions, I have been all the time putting myself in that position of what does it mean for me to do an exhibition and why to do an exhibition, and if ever to act. I mean, again, it is about positioning, and and to put in mostra, or to put in to demonstrate something, to show something, and in that sense, it's very important for me all the time. Socially engaged public art that we did, from campus in camps to the living room to the tree school, they are objects that we did for ourselves. I mean, we needed a school outside of the academia, and we did the camps first. We needed to understand how campus camps would be connected with other struggles in the world, and we did tree school. But if you ask me why do so, and no, at a certain point, we, for example, had no good school for our in Palestine, and we decided to establish a small school so they can study in it. But our socially engaged public art has been all the time sort of projects for ourselves, that we ourselves felt the urgency to do it, and then we open it to other people. When I speak about socially engaged public art and the opportunity that exhibitions gives me, is a way to be able to create for myself and few others around me certain projects that in real life I would not have been able to do. So it's crucial. It's not for others. It's not about others. It's not to help us. It's not to enable anyone. It is a whole continuous will and luxury and possibility to still be challenging my own mind. This is what for me socially art are useful for.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, everyone. And we're going to take a break, a 15-minute break, and then we're going to come back to the group sessions. And as I said, it would be great to that we come up with some themes, Sandy. So maybe you can stick online. I'll text you through the chat.
Should I say, should I come back at 3:30, or you send me?
I'll send you a message via chat, and I'll send you some proposals.
Fantastic. So maybe I will send you also my phone number, so you can send me there. Sure. Okay. Very good.
So we'll meet back at 3:30. See you soon.
Fantastic. Bye.